may have known you for a while, et cetera, in terms of how this all navigates. And that's part of what this elevation of superagency is.
Yeah. So when you say all of these things, I'm totally on board. But again, then I was reading your book and you talk about this like network autonomy. That's the concept you come up with there, which is, I think, very accurate. And you give this example of this donor party kind of in the like, I don't know, in the 19th century, where like they had more autonomy. There was much less law. It was like wild, wild west. You can do whatever you want pretty much. But of course, like for them getting from the, East Coast to Oregon was a much more grueling journey than now. You can just like, have your phone charged and, your credit card with you and you can go anywhere much more easily. So this is all persuasive. But then you were talking about things like, oh, imagine that like the traffic is enforced by AI automatically, that like if you park somewhere, it automatically charges you a fine if you are after the parking. And then I'm starting saying, wait, like this being kind of plugged into all of this, like this starts being uncomfortable. Yes, like I feel that we are getting again into the agency, because like, so how do you automate things in a way that doesn't take away my agency? And is this kind of this like future where like you are like really plugged in with AI, doing a lot of things like behind our backs, supposedly to implement the way our society works? Like, is it utopia or is it dystopia? Because to be honest, I cannot decide.
Well, I actually think we need to have a different word than utopia, like maybe potopia or something, positive topia, because utopia actually literally in the Greek, as you may know, is no place.
Yes.
Right. And I actually think that this is why the human agency design and the human well-being, the human elevation design is that principle, because we already have a lot of things working in the background that is part of how our society works. And actually, in fact, we go, okay, and like one question of agency is you say, okay, how do you approach you're taking an Uber ride? So if you go, oh, I summon it, it's there, it comes because I asked for it, it takes me where it is, it gives me this kind of increased agency and mobility, or it goes, it's the only way I can get there, I'm summoning someone, I don't know how good of a driver they are, I'm fearful about getting into an unknown person's car, et cetera, then it's like, I feel like I'm trapped in it, but I have to do it. And so agency is also in part of mindset. And most people then adopt to, hey, I'm either going to be taking Ubers this way, in this way that it's an extension of my agency, or I'm not going to be doing it. And I'm going to be figuring out something else. But the whole background of how Uber's operating is an enhancement of my agency. Now, the way to kind of think about this is, what is the way that we set up the fabric of our society? And part of the reason in superagency we go through this kind of consent of the governed is people just frequently say, well, the setting up of the fabric, that's the regulatory agency, this classic European GDPR, et cetera. That's the central decision makers deciding. It's like, no, actually, in fact, having networks adapting is really good. Networks of customers, networks of employees, networks of shareholders, networks of businesses doing business, networks of press investigating things and causing certain brand shifts to move and so forth. All of that is actually adaptation to getting to the right place. And what you want is you want to have where people feel that AI is for them and is for their interests in terms of how it's operating. And let me use, like, for example, one of the frequent criticisms of modern tech is surveillance capitalism, because they go, it's surveillance and surveillance is bad. And it's like, well, but actually, in fact, I like surveillance medicine, right? Because actually, in fact, knowing if I'm like something is going wrong with me, it's precisely when I go to the hospital, it's precisely the reason why I might wear a Whoop, an Oura Ring, etc., an Apple Watch for doing this, because that's for me. And actually, in fact, when people say, hey, surveillance really bad, they forget, for example, London's CCTV. Because of the kind of the Irish bombings and all the rest, London adopted a broad spread intensive CCTV program